felt like an eternity, Tony slowly made his way back to the edge of the tank, the shark following him closely. With a final pat on its fin, Tony climbed out of the water, his heart pounding with excitement and relief. The aquarium staff rushed to the tank, stunned at what they had just witnessed. Beach in the Bahamas, a place that offered both breathtaking scenery and the chance to capture stunning shots of one of the ocean's most awe-inspiring predators, the tiger shark. As Ryan arrived in Tiger Beach, he was struck by the stunning beauty of the place. He spent several days getting familiar with the area, marveling at the incredible underwater world that surrounded him. The turquoise waters were crystal clear, revealing a world of wonder and mystery beneath the surface. As he dived deeper into the water, Ryan was greeted by schools of brightly colored fish that darted playfully around him. The vibrant colors of the fish stood out against the backdrop of the coral reefs, their movements hypnotic and mesmerizing. The sun's rays filtered through the water, casting a golden glow on everything in its path. The light danced on the seafloor, creating a magical, almost otherworldly ambiance that took Ryan's breath away. He felt as if he had entered another dimension, one where the laws of physics and reality were slightly altered. As Ryan lost himself in the underwater world, his senses were completely engulfed by the awe-inspiring scenes that unfolded before him. The coral reefs, in all their resplendent glory, had become the focal point of his attention, and the schools of fish that swam past him appeared to dance with an ethereal tune. However, he had become oblivious to the predator that was inching closer to him from behind. A shadowy presence, lurking just beyond his periphery, stalked him with a silent grace, biding its time until it could strike. Ryan was utterly unaware of the imminent danger that was about to befall him. As if struck by a bolt of lightning, Ryan felt an excruciating pain jolt through his body. A sharp, searing sensation ripped through his left leg, and a muffled scream of agony escaped his lips. His heart raced with terrible realization as he recognized the source of his torment. A 13-foot tiger shark had clamped down on him with a ferocity that made his bones quake. Its powerful jaws, lined with razor-sharp teeth, ripped through his flesh with a frightening force. Ryan's mind raced as he struggled to comprehend the gravity of the situation. His worst nightmare had become a reality, and he was at the mercy of a fearsome predator, with no escape in sight. As the shark clamped its jaws down on Ryan's leg, its powerful muscles thrashed about, throwing him around like a toy in a fit of fury. The water turned a deep shade of crimson as Ryan's blood seeped out, mixing with the salt water. The sharp, serrated teeth of the tiger shark tore through his skin and muscle, causing unimaginable agony that shot through every nerve ending in his body. The pain was all-consuming, knocking out any other thoughts or sensations, and Ryan was left to endure the brutal assault of the predator in a world of pain and terror. Ryan tried to kick the shark repeatedly, but his efforts were futile against the shark's incredible strength. In one sickening crunch, the shark bit off Ryan's leg completely, severing it from his body with ruthless efficiency. As Ryan's muffled screams fell on the deaf ears of the ocean, the shark prepared to strike again, stalking its prey as it circled around him. Ryan's strength was waning, and his mangled leg was drowning him in pain. The shark lunged once more, its jaws gaping wide, ready to finish the job it had started. But this time, Ryan was prepared. Instinctively, he reached for the knife on his waist and plunged it into the shark's eye with all his might. The shark recoiled in pain, thrashing wildly in the water before retreating into the depths of the ocean. But Ryan's victory was short-lived. He was almost out of breath, his vision growing dim as he fought to stay conscious. As Ryan lost all hope, he saw a local diver approach him, a glimmer of hope in an otherwise hopeless situation. The diver managed to pull Ryan towards his boat, performing first aid as he called for rescue. Despite the diver's valiant efforts, The village was nestled among verdant hills, with wide sandy beaches that were fringed by palm trees. The locals were friendly and welcoming, and the pace of life was slow and unhurried. It was a place of simple pleasures, where the sound of the waves and the scent of the sea air were enough to make Juan feel content. One warm afternoon, Juan was exploring the shallow waters, diving for pearls in his favorite spot. The sun danced on the surface, casting a mesmerizing play of light as Juan scanned the sandy seabed. As he reached out to pick up a particularly gleaming pearl, something caught his eye and his peripheral vision. With a sudden burst of speed, a massive figure was closing in on him. Juan's heart skipped a beat as he realized it was a bull shark, known for its aggressive nature and sharp teeth. Panic surged through him as he tried to swim away, but the shark was faster, closing the distance in a matter of seconds. Before Juan could react, the shark lunged at him, its jaw snapping shut around his arm. The pain was searing as the shark's razor-sharp teeth sank into his flesh, drawing blood that mixed with the surrounding waters. Juan's mind raced as he struggled to break free, but the shark's grip was relentless. With a sickening crunch, the shark bit off Juan's arm, leaving him stunned and bleeding in the water. The once crystal-clear sea turned crimson as blood billowed around him, clouding his vision. As the shark swam away with Juan's arm in his jaws, Juan was left stunned and reeling in shock. The pain was excruciating, and panic surged through him as he realized the severity of his injuries. With a sheer force of will, he managed to swim towards the surface, his remaining arm propelling him through the water. Just as Juan reached the surface, he gasped for air and looked around, hoping for a way out of this nightmare. But his heart sank as he noticed a massive fin in the distance, cutting through the water with menacing speed. His worst fears were coming true. The shark was coming back for him. With a growing sense of dread, Juan tried to swim away as fast as he could, but he knew it was futile. He was injured, bleeding, and vulnerable. The shark could smell his blood and was closing in fast. Juan knew what was about to happen, but he just couldn't do anything. Suddenly, a sharp pain shot through his left leg, and he let out a piercing scream. His scream echoed across the water, a call for help that went unanswered. The massive shark continued to sink its teeth deeper into Juan's flesh, but he refused to give up. He fought with all his might, summoning every ounce of strength and willpower that he had left. Juan kicked, punched, and thrashed about in a desperate attempt to free himself from the shark's grip. The pain was unbearable, but Juan refused to let the shark be the end of him. As the shark relentlessly attacked Juan, a sense of doom set in. He wondered if this is how it was going to end, his lifeless body sinking to the bottom of the ocean, consumed by a predator. But the will to survive coursed through Juan's veins, fueling him to keep fighting. He could feel the rush of adrenaline pulsing through his body, giving him a temporary boost of strength. Despite his valiant efforts, Juan's screams for help went unheard. He was on his own, or so he thought. Pearls and the schools of tropical fish that darted past him. He spotted a giant manta ray gliding gracefully overhead, and he felt a rush of excitement and awe. For the next hour, Harvey and his dive buddies explored the reef, taking in the breathtaking beauty of this underwater paradise. They spotted a sea turtle lazily swimming by, and Harvey snapped some photos with his underwater camera. He also saw a small octopus hiding in a crevice and a bright orange starfish clinging to a rock. As they ascended back to the surface, Harvey felt a sense of exhilaration and joy. He couldn't wait for the next dive, which was scheduled for later that morning. After a brief break, Harvey and the others geared up again and headed back into the water. This time, they were on a mission to locate a sunken shipwreck that was rumored to be in the area. Using their compasses and underwater maps, they navigated through the reef until they reached the spot where the wreck was supposed to be. At first, they saw nothing but sand and coral, but suddenly, Harvey spotted a dark shape looming in the distance. As they got closer, they realized it was indeed a shipwreck covered in barnacles and surrounded by schools of fish. They swam around the wreck, exploring its nooks and crannies and taking more photos. Harvey was thrilled to have discovered such an amazing sight, and he felt a sense of pride and accomplishment. After the second dive, Harvey and the others returned to the dive boat, tired but happy. They chatted about their experiences and shared their photos, swapping stories and tips. Harvey couldn't believe how lucky he was to have such an incredible job, exploring one of the most beautiful places on Earth. As the sun set over the reef, Harvey settled into his cabin, ready for a good night's sleep. He knew that tomorrow would bring more adventures and more discoveries, and he couldn't wait to see what the reef had in store for him next. Harvey had always been fascinated by shipwrecks, and after yesterday's dive where they discovered one in the Great Barrier Reef, he knew he had to return for a closer look. He planned his dive carefully, ensuring he had all the necessary gear, and set out early in the morning together with his fellow divers. As they approached the shipwreck, he noticed something moving in the distance. At first, he assumed it was just a school of fish, but as he got closer, he realized it was something much bigger, a great white shark. Harvey's heart began to race with excitement and apprehension. He had never encountered great white sharks up close before, and he knew that one wrong move could mean disaster. As Harvey entered the water, he was immediately struck by the sheer size and power of the great white sharks. They glided through the water with an effortless grace, their razor-sharp teeth gleaming in the sunlight. Despite their fearsome reputation, Harvey felt a deep respect and awe for these magnificent creatures. He moved slowly and deliberately, keeping a safe distance while carefully tagging each one with a small device. As the day wore on, Harvey's initial apprehension began to give way to a sense of wonder and exhilaration. He was witnessing one of nature's most incredible spectacles, and he knew that he was privileged to be a part of it. Harvey watched the massive shark circling around the shipwreck. He knew that great whites were common in the area, but he had never encountered one up close before. He hesitated for a moment, wondering if they should abandon the dive, but his curiosity got the better of him, and he convinced the others to press on. They approached the wreck slowly and carefully, keeping a close eye on the shark. As they got closer, Harvey realized that the wreck was home to a whole ecosystem of marine life. Schools of fish swam in and out of the nooks and crannies, and he saw lobsters and crabs scurrying along the ocean floor. He also noticed that the great white shark seemed to be hunting around the wreck, using it as a source of food. Harvey watched in amazement as the shark darted in and out of the shadows, searching for prey. For a few minutes, Harvey forgot his fear and was completely absorbed in the underwater world around him. He was so engrossed in his observations when he felt something shift in his backpack. He tried to adjust it, but in doing so, he accidentally kicked a small rock that had been resting on the ocean floor. The sound of the rock hitting the shipwreck echoed through the water, and suddenly, Harvey heard a loud thrashing sound. He looked around and saw a massive shark heading straight for him. Harvey knew that he had made a mistake. He had accidentally disturbed the shark's peaceful existence and now put himself in grave danger. He tried to swim away as fast as he could, but the shark was too fast. It closed in on him, and Harvey could see its sharp teeth glinting in the dim light. The group was horrified as they watched the shark relentlessly attack Harvey, its jaws clamped tightly around his shoulder. Without wasting a second, the group of divers sprang into action. They formed a human chain, trying to distract the shark and draw its attention away from Harvey. Some of them even swam towards the shark and tried to hit it with their diving gear. Another diver signaled for the group to surface and call for help, hoping that a nearby boat or rescue team could come to their aid. However, the shark was too strong and too determined to let go of its prey. It thrashed around violently, causing chaos in the water. The shark to be even more to the Pacific Ocean, off the coast of Hawaii. As they set out, the bright sun sparkled on the tranquil water, luring them in, prey desperately trying to escape the butter, leaving a gaping wound that gushed blood into the ocean. Lisa felt her consciousness slipping away as the pain became too much to bear. Her vision blurred, and she struggled to stay awake, but eventually succumbed to the darkness. The guide's heart raced with adrenaline as he saw Lisa's body sinking rapidly into the abyss. With a burst of energy, he kicked his way towards her, determined to save her. But as he reached her, a sudden chill ran down his spine. From the murky depths emerged the same tiger shark, its massive jaws wide open, ready to strike again. The guide's heart pounded in his chest as he watched in horror as the shark bit off Lisa's other leg in a single swift motion. The guide's blood ran cold as he watched in horror as the massive tiger shark ripped off Lisa's limbs one after another, leaving her helpless and mutilated in its wake. He was frozen in fear, unable to process what was happening before his very eyes. The shark's powerful jaws snapped and tore at her flesh, its razor-sharp teeth sinking deep into her body, causing blood to cloud the water. As Lisa's body was being torn apart, the guide felt a sickening feeling in the pit of his stomach, knowing that he had failed to protect her. His mind raced with thoughts of what he could have done differently, but it was too late. The shark, having taken its fill, grabbed Lisa's lifeless carcass and dragged it down to the murky depths of the ocean, leaving the guide in a state of shock and disbelief. He felt helpless, unconscious. The sound of the shark's fins slicing through the water sent shivers down their spines, and they knew they had to act quickly to return to shore. As they sped back to shore, Sarah felt relieved knowing she had survived a deadly attack by one of the ocean's most notorious predators. She couldn't stop thinking about the shark and how close she came to losing her life. South Carolina are a sight to behold. The crystal clear water sparkled under the bright sun, and the soft sand felt warm and inviting underfoot. The ocean breeze carried with it the scent of salt and sea, and the sound of crashing waves provided dive off the boat and swim around in the deep waters below, daring each other to see who could stay under the longest. Andy was hesitant at first, knowing that the deep waters were home to all kinds of creatures, some of them dangerous. But the peer pressure and the allure of adventure got the better of him. He took a deep breath and plunged into the cool water, the others following suit. For a few moments it was all laughter and splashing around, but then, out of nowhere, a dark shadow loomed beneath the surface. Andy barely had time to register what was happening before a massive creature revealed itself to Andy and all his friends. To their horror, they met the apex predator of the sea, the great white shark. As Andy struggled in the water, his body thrashing with fear, his eyes locked onto the great white shark's eyes. They were cold and black, filled with a primal hunger that chilled him to the bone. The shark's massive jaws opened wide, revealing row upon row of razor-sharp teeth, each one glinting in the sunlight. Andy's heart pounded in his chest as he fought to stay afloat, but the shark was relentless. Its powerful jaws clamped down on his leg, the teeth sinking deep into his flesh. The pain was excruciating, a white-hot fire that shot through his entire body. The freezing ocean engulfed him, the salt water stinging his eyes and nostrils. He kicked and thrashed, desperate to reach the surface and escape the jaws of the great white. But the shark was relentless, circling him with the precision of a hunter, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. Blood seeped into the water from the gash on Andy's leg, a result of the shark's initial assault. The metallic tang of blood filled the water, further inciting the shark's primal instincts. Andy's heart raced as he felt the beast's massive jaws clamp down on his leg, its serrated teeth tearing through flesh and bone like a hot knife through butter. He screamed, the pain unbearable, as the shark shook its massive head, trying to rip him apart. Andy's survival instincts kicked in, and he fought back with everything he had. He jabbed at the shark's eyes, desperately trying to pry open its monstrous jaws that were clamped around his leg. The water turned into a crimson hue as blood mixed with seawater, creating a macabre scene. His vision blurred, his strength waning. Andy knew he was in the fight for his life. He mustered every ounce of energy left in him and delivered a powerful punch to the shark's snout. The shark finally released him, its eyes rolling back in momentary shock, giving Andy the opportunity he needed. He propelled himself towards the surface, blood trailing behind him like a grotesque crimson ribbon. His friends on the boat were screaming his name, reaching out for him as he breached the surface, gasping for air. But the shark wasn't done yet. With a final burst of speed, the great white charged at Andy, its massive jaws gaping wide. Andy's friends watched in horror as the shark's teeth closed around him, tearing him apart in a gruesome spectacle. Blood sprayed into the air, painting the ocean in a deep shade of red as Andy's body disappeared beneath the surface, consumed by a ravenous predator. The sea calmed, the only evidence of the harrowing ordeal being the blood-stained water, a haunting reminder of the brutal power and unforgiving nature of the great white shark. The rest of the trip was a blur for the group. They made up stories about what had happened to Andy, telling anyone who asked that he had met a girl and decided to stay in South Carolina of sharks, accumulating around a single point in the water, something you wouldn't see too often. The guide asked the pilot of the boat to slow down so everyone could get a better look. Upon closer inspection, they saw that there were 3 sharks feeding on something in the water, and they couldn't identify it on account of all the blood in the water. The tourists gathered on the boat's railing to see the shark, as the guide described it as a must-see event. They pressed on the railing, struggling to see over each other to take in as much of the scene as possible. Michelle and Roger were side by side and talking about how interesting the scene was. The sharks were ravenous and zipping through the water, absolutely tearing at whatever was in the water. At the peak of the feeding frenzy, the guide said that the boat would start up at that point to stay on schedule. The boat was turned on and started slowly moving forward, and the guide continued to explain what they would do upon returning to Freetown. However, the guide's words were drowned out of Michelle's ears as she hyper-focused on the squeaky railing getting progressively louder. It gave way. Within a moment, Michelle found herself splashing in the water in the middle of the shiver of sharks. The rest of the people on the boat barely managed to hold on to each other to not follow Michelle. Roger screamed after his wife and made an attempt to jump in after her, but the guide prevented him from doing that since the shark would attack him as well, and they would have to save both of them. The moment she fell into the water, Michelle immediately felt the harsh, coarse skin of one of the sharks shred the skin on her back, making her yelp in pain. She flailed her arms in panic as she tried to get to the surface more securely. Normally, Michelle might have had a chance to swim to safety if it was a different shark species in the water with her. But these were bull sharks, and they were hungry. Just as Michelle made eye contact with Roger, she felt a searing pain in her lower thigh, which made her shriek and fall below the surface again. The shark took the move to take the first bite, and was quickly out of the way to make way for the next mouth. The guide and the boat's pilot were trying to get the boat closer to Michelle, but it had already moved at least a dozen yards away. Roger was screaming at them to get the boat closer so he could pull his wife to safety, but it wasn't working out at all. Michelle felt another set of teeth clamp down on her ankle, pulling her under the water as a strong force knocked into her ribs, disorienting her. All at once, she felt a tremendous amount of pain as the third shark took hold of her right arm, tearing into it and releasing a red mist in the water around her. The pain was more than too much, so after expressing one final scream with the last of her breath, her consciousness started to fade. The last thing she remembered before waking up in the hospital was her husband's hands clutching her arms and pulling her up from the aquatic hell. According to Roger, Michelle Bay took their breath away. As the sun sets over False Bay, the sky lights up in a spectacular display of oranges, pinks, and purples. The sound of the waves and ripples lapping against the shore is the only thing that breaks the silence, and it's easy to imagine that you're the only person left in the world. It's a place of natural beauty and tranquility, where the cares of the world melt away, and all that's left is the endless expanse of the ocean stretching out above water, and the unmistakable sight of blood starting to spread around her. With his heart pounding in his chest, Daniel knew he had to act fast. Without a moment's hesitation, he dove into the water and immediately saw the cause of Julia's distress. A bull shark had latched on Julia and Daniel kicked violently in the direction of the shark, fighting with all their might to keep it at bay and make their way to safety. Despite the searing pain in her leg, Julia refused to let fear overcome her. She was determined to survive and protect herself and Daniel. With adrenaline coursing through their veins, the couple fought back against the shark with everything they had, landing punches and kicks on the creature in a desperate bid for survival. In a desperate move, Daniel kicked the shark's snout, causing it to retreat in shock, creating a momentary respite for the couple. However, they knew they couldn't afford to let their guard down. Julia's injury needed urgent medical attention, and they had to reach the safety of the boat as soon as possible. With one arm around Julia, Daniel slowly escorted her towards the boat, his eyes scanning the water for any signs of the shark's return. Skyline of San Francisco and the eerie sight of Alcatraz Island looming in the middle of the water. Whites, hammerheads, tiger sharks, and more. But when they got the call about a series of shark attacks in Volusia County, Florida, they knew that this was going to be their toughest assignment yet. 5 people had been injured and maimed and collided with their boat, jolting everyone on board. Tony, one of the seasoned crew members, was caught off balance and was inadvertently knocked overboard, plunging into the water below. As the crew frantically rushed to Tony's aid, their hearts pounded with fear and urgency. They scanned the waters for any sign of Tony's whereabouts. But before they could react, a 20-foot great white shark emerged from beneath the surface with lightning speed. With jaws wide open, the shark lunged at Tony, clamping its razor-sharp teeth onto his body. The crew's worst fears became a horrifying reality as Tony was dragged under the water by the powerful shark. The surface of the water turned crimson with blood, a stark and chilling reminder of the perilous situation. The crew's hearts pounded with fear as they watched their comrade Tony struggle in the jaws of the great white shark. Without a moment's hesitation, Harvey and the other crew members sprang into action, diving into the water and racing to Tony's rescue. The water was murky, and the shark's movements were unpredictable, making the situation all the more dangerous. As they drew closer, they could hear Tony's desperate thrashing as he fought for his life. Harvey and the crew felt a mix of emotions, fear, determination, and an overwhelming sense of responsibility to protect their friend. Adrenaline was pumping through their veins as they approached the terrifying predator. He drew his knife and plunged it into the shark's scaly hide, hoping to weaken its resolve. But the predator was relentless, attacking again and again with a ferocity that was both awe-inspiring and terrifying. As the struggle continued, the water around them turned crimson with Damien's blood, a macabre painting that seemed to mirror the violence unfolding before their eyes. Despite the pain and fear, Damien refused to give up, battling the shark with every ounce of strength he had left. But with each passing moment, his strength began to ebb, and the predator's grip began to tighten. In that moment, it seemed as though all hope was lost, and Damien's fate was sealed. Justin's heart pounded at his chest as he moved to intervene, but as if drawn by the scent of blood, another massive great white shark appeared out of nowhere. The 2 sharks circled Damien, their dark eyes fixed on their prey with an intensity that sent chills down Justin's spine. Damien fought with all his might, but the sharks were merciless in their attack. With a swift motion, one of the sharks lunged at Damien's torso, its serrated teeth tearing into his flesh. The water turned crimson as Damien's blood mixed with the salt water, creating a gruesome scene that played out in slow motion before Justin's eyes. He screamed, the sound muffled by the water as he watched in horror, unable to comprehend the nightmare unfolding in front of him. The second shark joined in the attack, tearing into Damien from the other side, ripping his body apart with brutal force. Damien's screams were silenced as the sharks tore him apart like a rag doll, leaving only shreds of his wetsuit and a trail of blood in their wake. Justin's mind went blank, paralyzed with shock and horror at the sight of